Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, Ewan from WhatCulture Gaming, today joined by Scott.
Hi.
Now, Scott, we're here today to talk about a topic that is near and dear and close to our hearts.
Yes.
In Ubisoft. Now, I know that might seem like a controversial statement to make in the year of our Lord Joker 2019, but
Yes.
it's an important point to make because Ghost Recon Breakpoint released last week, and if you've been keeping up with it, you'll know that it's a little teeny weeny yellow
It's not doing very well.
bikini bad kind of game that's really bad.
Yes, but the thing is with that, I mean, obviously, ironically, hilariously, it's called Breakpoint, but a lot of people have reached their breakpoint with the amount of either copycat design on Ubisoft's part in terms of the way that they design open world games, or more presently, the sheer amount of microtransactions in the game. Obviously, something that's happened recently is that Ubisoft went back to the game and removed the time saver microtransactions, which is hilarious. Reminds me of Battlefront 2. Reminds me of the sort of like, oh god, everything's on fire. Let's just sort of squeeze a fire extinguisher at this bit.
Squeeze it. That's what you do.
That's what you squeeze the trig, and and you sort of save it for a bit. But for the most part, the Ghost Recon's been received terribly. And I saw a 1 out of 5 review go up this morning from I think it was VG247, and it just seems like a lot of people have had it up to here with what a general feeling that we've had across this generation. And it's just the Ubisoft of old, the one that we remember, is kind of barely in there anymore. So we kind of thought we'd just have a little conversation about the state of Ubisoft.
Yeah, because Josh sent us the video of Croby Cat. Go check out that channel if you haven't already. It's really, really funny. They did a Ghost Recon Hurt Itself Today video, and it's set to Johnny Cash's Hurt, and I was so emotional because they go through the glory days of Ghost Recon with your LAN parties and such on Advanced Warfighter and Advanced Warfighter 2, two fantastic third-person shooter games that really developed in conjunction with Red Storm. They had 2 unique identities, the online co-op and the single player. They played very differently, but both components came together to form one cohesive whole. And Ghost Recon has always been about, if you're a fan of that series, it's always been about that kind of pseudo milli-sim type video game where it isn't Operation Flashpoint, but you do have to think about it. Whereas it seems as though with Breakpoint, the game that we were promised at E3, which was survival mechanics, really leaning into the idea that you're a ghost in the wild and you've got an entire more capable military force to take you down. And it seems as though in between the summer and where we are now, Ubisoft has stepped in and gone, where are the... But this isn't the Division?
No, I know.
We agreed to this?
And it's like it feels so much like the Division in a jungle. Which, like, I mean, the thing is that's really weird. Obviously, there's that vertical slice that we got earlier on that made it look like more of a survival-based game with like way more specific mechanics about covering yourself in camouflage and in mud, and you're picking your spots and choosing when you're going to do headshots and everything. If you played the beta, or at least the very beginning of the beta, it's so same, and it's so promising because it does start out with a more sort of narrative focus, and I love the feel of it at the very beginning where it feels more intense and it feels like you're one person against all these different, this paramilitary organization, and you're, trying to go like I said, headshot by headshot, jungle tundra to jungle tundra as you like gradually claw your way back to surviving or whatever, and then it becomes a massive online multiplayer game with all sorts of grind.
And then you see everyone popping in. It's like, this makes no sense because the entire idea is that you're meant to be one man with your ghost buddies up against this entire force. Then you beam in and suddenly everyone's T-posing in this cave, just like, hello, I'm trying to trade in my 5 finger gloves that I've just gotten while on the run because people leave gear like it's an Easter egg hunt out in the wild, and it just isn't Ghost Recon. No. And I feel as though Ubisoft, to me, this generation, when we look back on it, has been typified by their key tentpole franchises being done to death and then losing their identity in some overblown reactionary step to try and win faith back again. I know that Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey were both positively received, but to me, when I think of Assassin's Creed, I think of a third-person historical action game
and stealth
and less RPG elements. I don't think about looting a chest and getting a level 55 spear and using that to defeat this level 54 enemy. To me, that isn't Assassin's Creed, and that was annoying because I feel as though Ubisoft, when Unity came out, and that was when everyone kind of had their first kind of breaking point, their first trigger. Assassin's Creed Syndicate came out a year later, and it was really, really good, but no one played it. And I feel as though that was a big issue, because then after that, we had the series going on hiatus, and then these new Assassin's Creed games have come out, and even though I definitely see the appeal of them, to me, that isn't what the old franchise is.
It's weird as well, because for the longest time, loads of people have made jokes about the idea that Ubisoft is going to make the video game, and it'll just be the everything game. And it's like you mentioned before about, you want to get your level 50 spear and go fight some enemy. If you literally just said, what's the Ubisoft game where I level up my equipment to take on over-leveled enemies or boss characters? It's every single one of them. And that's a massive problem. And I think that they've obviously tried to make they want to have a developer identity or a company identity, a la Naughty Dog or Rockstar. But I don't think it hasn't worked when you've homogenized all your franchises that should have key separate identities. I mean, one of the only ones that stands out as a net positive is Rainbow Six Siege, which doubled down on its more tactical elements, became pretty much the best tactical shooter of the generation, and it does feel definable. But everything else is just this weird homogenized glob of mechanics.
Well, even with Rainbow Six Siege, is that I mean, as much as I love that game, it's completely unrecognizable compared to the old Rainbow Six games. It's multiplayer only. Before at E3, they had the big song and dance when they first announced it that it was going to have a single player with Angela Bassett, and you actually play the single player of Siege, it's non-existent.
It's more like
they promised a single player and then it released without a single player, and the multiplayer itself plays phenomenally, but it's still not the classic Rainbow Six, and then that's why there's some frustration when you have Ubisoft go ahead and announce a zombie-themed spin-off of Rainbow Six Siege next year, and not something that more plays to the roots of the series. You can still have the Rainbow Six Siege formula, but certainly maybe hone in on that classic Tom Clancy brand, because I look at a Tom Clancy game right now and I'm like, I don't even know what you're meant to be anymore. We've not had a Splinter Cell since Blacklist, which I think was Ubisoft's genuinely great last great Tom Clancy video game apart from Rainbow Six Siege, which is just a multiplayer game, and that is really, really worrying me, because I don't think there's any less interest in these games out on the market. I just think that Ubisoft are looking at the assets they have, the resources they have, and are thinking, well, we can apply that mechanic to X game, we can apply X game to that mechanic, and smooshing them all together in some corporate synergistic awfulness.
You can see
exactly, it's just bad.
Yeah, you can see exactly what they're doing, and that's why it's so nakedly obvious where it's going wrong, because it feels like, they've come together, they've had all these homogenized design approaches, everything gets meshed together. We'll have the open world element here, the loot grind here, the leveling system, whatever. But one of the other massive things that goes alongside this stuff is how rushed it all is to market. It feels like they get to the point where it's just playable. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is nigh on in like an alpha state or a beta state. The sheer amount of bugs and glitches and unfinished elements, and the fact that they're taking the microtransactions back out, they're clearly still balancing the economy and figuring out what it's supposed to be while the game is live. And it feels like they get the games to a state where they're sellable, they're playable, we have a playable build of something, and just kick it out the door and we'll patch it later. And I don't think that's on behalf of the developers. If you speak to any developers, look at interviews, they will work on a game as long as possible to perfect it. I think it's their publishing wing. I think it's the higher ups. You have to assume that it's this nebulous higher up entity, but look at the finished products that we're getting given. They're not finished games, and they used to be, like, maybe more so because the console generations of old mandated finished games. But with the easy access to patches and updates, I feel like they've doubled down on that in the worst possible way. You're buying an unfinished game every time now.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing, because obviously Ghost Recon Wildlands came out, was it 2016 that it came out? And then we had that, this little brief wait. We had Breakpoint get announced at E3 this year. And again, it looked really, really good. I was kind of on board. I was like, it looks like they've taken what they thought about Wildlands, which for all its faults did have promising elements. And then they've kind of looked at that and gone, well, okay, we'll do that. But then Ubisoft have come in and basically been like, here's all the microtransactions, just gonna let you deal with that. And it's frustrating, because maybe you look at that now and you think, well, if they are working on a new Splinter Cell, they're probably thinking how they're going to incorporate Sam Fisher can, how many different kind of goggles
that would totally be what they would do
in the wild, or like what kind of suits you can loot.
Oh man, they would make you pay for the squee goggle noise. Yeah, it would probably come with like a really bad one.
And it's a shame, because Ubisoft, we're talking about a renowned video game publisher and network of studios that's been going for 2 decades. Yeah, and they've made fantastic games. I think the golden age, you could probably point back to between 2005 and 2010, when they had so many good releases. And now it's just a case of they're known for reiterating their own cliches, like the Far Cry antagonist. It feels like they hone in on one good hit, and then they put that hit into everything afterwards until the premise is exhausted.
Which feels like the most solely corporate way to approach something that should be an inherently artistic medium. You look at the thing that sells and you just double down on it over and over and over again. And it's in games, sometimes you can get away with that if the gameplay itself is really fun, but if the game is unfinished, then you can't even hang it on that. It's just weird, because I wrote down a couple of games that I thought at least show that they're trying something else. Something like Steep, at least that was like a snowboarding game, which we haven't seen anything of this generation other than Steep. Wasn't a perfect game, but at least I like that they tried. Starlink Battle for Atlas, I love the idea that they try to do a Star Fox adjacent space shooter. That's great. Again, that game got bogged down in its economy. The extra parts that you had to buy were extremely overpriced.
That was Toys to Life, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. You could buy different ship parts and put them together. I also put down For Honor as well, which is like a almost Dark Soulsian controlling game.
Remember the lovely little year that was when we had the awesome guy who came out on E3 with the mad beard.
Oh, the dude with the big cane and everything.
Yeah,
and it's like
class.
all the things that surrounded something like For Honor were brilliant. It was, oh man, they're trying something new. It's still a massively online game, but the way that you control it was unlike anything else. But that game again was completely pilfered by its steal economy. The way that game's microtransactions were balanced and its in-game economy was balanced. Fans took one look at it, crunched the numbers on the drop rates, and realized that they'd have to play it for like 500 hours.
And this is the frustrating thing as well, because if you look at a model like Rainbow Six Siege, it's been successful because all the updates have been free. If you buy Rainbow Six Siege, you'll have a plethora of operators to choose from, and the only thing that you really, the only thing that are dedicated a lot behind the microtransactions are some unique cosmetics. If you play enough, you can grind out the renown to get new gun skins, get new operators, and that's how that game is, persisted for so long. But when you're looking at and applying that mechanic to a game that is off the gate, players don't have that, the bank of in-game currency stored up, so it's just it just flops.
You're also asking like a premium price for a product. You're also, you're charging $50-$60 for a brand new game that should mean something if you're paying that much money. And then applying these sort of free-to-play modes, as in it releases unfinished, or it has microtransaction system, or it has an economy that's forever being tweaked. These things are now unacceptable in a game that you're asking a premium price for. You can get away with it, quote unquote, more in a free-to-play game. But I just think that the way that they're set up is maximum profit and minimum quality control, which is only a recipe for their reputation to continue going south. And it's weird because for the most part, like, you want to believe in Ubisoft because of the things that they've done in the past, but it only takes something like this to be like the straw on the camel's back or whatever. And it's like, actually, no, you have a lot of massive problems, and we put up with them until something is as egregious as this, and just reminds us.
Because it's like sporadic success, isn't it? We had Watch Dogs 2, which was really, really good. And then we've got Legion coming out next year as well, which hopefully steadies the ship just a little bit more. I do think it would probably be best for Ubisoft at the end of the generation to take stock of what happened and maybe consider that homogenizing all their franchise identities is going to leave them with no identity. And that's not what anyone wants. It's not what Ubisoft wants, it's not what the fans want, and it's not what I want, which matters most of all, obviously.
Get little Ewan in, get him in the studio and just point at him and go, what do you want? And you'll say Splinter Cell, and you can move forward with the best of it. I want the thing with the dogs. But it's just, at this point, it's exactly what Ewan said. Like, at this point, they are homogenizing way too many identities that could be so many subsisting separate franchises. And it's just a weird thing to do, and we're clearly seeing right through it, so it's bad.
Let us know what you think of Ubisoft's ostensible downfall down in the comments below. Are you frustrated with how their generation has gone, or are you actually kind of pleasantly surprised at their attempts to make amends? Please let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and head back on over to whatculture.com/gaming for more news, lists, and spicy takes like these every day. Once again, I've been Ewan. You can follow me on Twitter at @NewMoonsThings. I've been joined by Scott.
Hello, you can follow me at @LP89.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Miss Cursory.
It's all gonna be alright, mate.